Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Muriel and in this video I will be doing a book review for Hollow Kingdom written by Kira Jane Buxton. And well, fuck me if I haven't acquired yet another new favorite this year. Hollow Kingdom is a book I heard about from another booktuber and that I basically decided to read because it features a crow main character. That seemed like a good enough reason to me, but apart from that, I didn't expect much going in, and oh my god, wow! Just wow. So, yes, this is going to be another Rave review. Not that long after my Rave review for Elder Race, no less. To give a very basic premise of Hollow Kingdom, a plague strikes humanity, transforming them into particularly mushy, oozy, and screen-attracted zombies. In Seattle, more specifically, a domesticated crow named St, who cares deeply about his afflicted human, Big Jim, sets out into the wide world with the family dog, Dennis, to try and save what he can of humanity. There is so much more to it than this basic premise, but I don't want to give anything away. Going in relatively blind worked wonders for me, and I would encourage others to do so as well. This writing section is actually going to be a bit longer than usual, but there's a reason for that. It actually took me a while to get truly invested in Hollow Kingdom. This is mostly due to the fact it has what I like to call a pretty intensely hybridized prose style. By that, I mean that the book features both pretty lowbrow or vulgar language and remarkably highbrow, lexically precise and lyrical language. Once I understood why, according to my interpretation of course, it was written the way it was, it all started clicking for me. The vulgar language, as I see it, basically serves world-building and character development functions. The story is principally told from the point of view of a human-raised crow, St, which stands for shitturd because I guess his human can think of anything better and or nicer. And St has learned human speech or language both from TV documentaries or even actually TV reality shows, and his rough, foul-mouthed human, Big Jim. One example of this I'll give is the fact humans are called mofos by St, so you all know what mofo means, right? Because that's what his somewhat antisocial human called other people. So yeah, to him it makes sense, humans are mofos, but he says it affectionately. But the story is also seen from and involves other non-human animal characters. And if you think about it, non-humans wouldn't necessarily have the same qualms we do about certain organic processes or substances, if you catch my drift here. It kind of makes sense that, for example, a cat or a dog would talk about bodily waste in a way mostly foreign to human appreciation or decency, because those things are part of their sensory perception and behavioral repertoire when it comes to things like, marking territory or expressing displeasure. In this respect, the writing has an organic rawness, if you will, to it that reminded me of paganism-infused Mythago Wood and Lavandis, and the Mists of Avalon. Though, in the case of Hollow Kingdom, this feeling of rawness is even greater because, once again, the story is experienced solely through non-human characters. But then all of that is counterbalanced with incredibly lyrical writing about nature, love, interconnectedness, balance, etc. There is also lexical precision, like I said, when it comes to various zoological things, and the usage of pretty fancy descriptive words, not entirely unlike what China Medieval is known for, which could have easily felt pretentious, but just didn't in this novel. This also means this book is very rich and variegated from a tonal standpoint. There is incredibly deep emotion here, but also rather silly humor. Like calling humans mofos. You'd think that would get old after a while, and that's what I expected, but it didn't. And this can even, yes, border on goofiness at times, yet it somehow worked for me, and I was really surprised by that. There's just so much bloody texture here. Different layers assembled in a way that could feel dissonant, but doesn't. The writing is basically delicately balanced, kind of like nature herself. Besides that, I have to praise the way the author wrote different punctual animal points of view. So this book has one main point of view, that of the crow St, and a straightforward temporal narrative progression as well. But there are also many chapters interspersed in the book that give voice to a selection of different animals, and their voices felt extremely convincing to me. For instance, there's a cat character, can't remember his name, and his voice just oozes contempt, narcissism, and a kind of superiority complex. I guess you could see him as a high-functioning sociopath, maybe. I mean, granted, it kind of sounds like the stereotype a lot of people have about cats, in a way, but it just worked. And I mean, he calls his erstwhile humans my mediocre servants. And I'm sorry, but that's just funny to me. And interestingly enough, the closest literary parallel to this kind of animal mind exposition I could think of is what you get in Adrian Tchaikovsky's Children of Time and Children of Ruin, and upcoming Children of Memory. So I actually kind of covered a bit of character work in the writing section there. Oops. All I'll add is that I thought the non-human character work was superb. St is a magnificently realized crow character, in no small part because he was raised by a human being, and funnily enough identifies, partly at least, as a human being himself. Identity is most definitely one of the story's themes, and St most assuredly experiences a crisis of identity, caught as he is between two worlds, the human one and the wild one. He's such a colourful character and has exactly the kind of personality I would expect from a corvid. All of those animals are individuals as well, but you know, as human beings, we also kind of expect a certain personality template for different species, so that's what I'm referring to. He's intelligent, he's resourceful, cheeky, has a sense of humour, is fiercely loyal to strange little murder as in a murder of crows, but he's also a bit of a scaredy cat at times. And the funny thing about that is that in real life, birds can get freaked out by the randomest things. I speak from experience living with a bird for 7 years. It was just really funny to me. I mean, obviously, I'm sure it wasn't funny to her, to my little baby, but Lily would get freaked out at an ironing board. And yeah, I mean, I kind of laugh because why are you scared of an ironing board, though? There is also Dennis, Big Jim, then St's hound. I believe he's a bloodhound, but don't quote me on that. Like, I'm not the hugest dog person on earth, though I do love all animals except ticks and centipedes. They can go fuck themselves. But oh my god, this goodest boy, this heartwarming doggo, has such a wonderful and emotional character arc. Just so many goddamn feels. And there are other characters, of course. There is an African grey parrot named Gubari. There's an octopus character named Onida. There are other crows. There's an orangutan. There are elephants, other dogs, and they all feel fucking soulful, is what I want to call it. They're individuals. Yeah, like I said, they also just kind of incarnate what you might expect as a human being from this or that species, but they had so much soul and character, all of them. And same goes for the many varied interactions between the characters. Of course, pride of place is given to the birds, and I was there for that 3000%. Give me them beebs. But if you're not yourself a bird nut, then, like I said, a variety of species make an appearance in this book. This is a book about non-human characters, but humanity occupies a central place in the book's theming, interestingly enough, and I'll get back to that. But more specifically, however, I have to acknowledge the fact the author did a great job of also creating a fully fleshed out human character as well. Big Jim. Big Jim is not a protagonist, but you learn quite a bit about him through St's loving memories of him. The author could have easily let him remain this rough kind of dude bro in the background, but no, she bothered to make something more out of him. A rough man, yes, but with hidden depths. Antisocial, not very educated, but with a heart open enough to love and cherish a dog and, you know, a hand-reared crow as family. And, you know, that just also hit me in the feels so fucking hard because human, non-human love, that just speaks to me. Hollow Kingdom, a bit like Hummingbird Salamander actually, but even more so, is hard to place genre-wise. It has an element of very light horror / apocalyptic science fiction, the virus that kills and zombifies humans, and it features animals which, yes, are anthropomorphized to a certain baseline degree, right? Because it was necessary from a purely narrative point of view. So in that respect, it could potentially qualify as magical realism, I suppose. So there's not much to say world-building wise that isn't, like with Hummingbird Salamander, once again, spoiler material. Suffice it to say, an aspect of the human infecting plague serves to prop up the theming in a perhaps slightly on-the-nose fashion, but which I once again thought ultimately worked. Onto the theming then. There is, for starters, a huge found family aspect to this story. If you enjoy that, you'll definitely get that in this book. Both with human Big Jim adopting a dog and a baby crow, but also with ST forming an, at first, pretty sad and depressed little murder with Dennis the dog, and then with ST and Dennis relating to other non-human animals. A lot is written about community, finding one's people, or murder, as the case may be, because yes, for ST, murder means family, tribe, that kind of thing. There is no romance, but there is so much about friendship, and more broadly, just about love, that is delicately woven into the story of Hollow Kingdom. Linked to this is a fascinating, because of the way it's, realized, layered exploration of identity. As already stated, ST the Crow partly identifies as a human being, and even comes to reject his crowhood because he misses his human-defined life and his human friends so bloody much. His is a dual-species citizenship, if you will. He has a talon in the dying world of the humans, and another in the flourishing world of wildlife. In this respect, as a kind of walker between the worlds, he's also almost like a kind of bird shaman and a repository of human knowledge and culture. And for this, he receives the title of the one who keeps. There's also quite a bit to chew on here about not only the defilement and destruction of the environment, but also about the way we human beings have become disconnected not only from the wider web of life, but from each other as well. The animals display a much greater sense of community with a capital C, even if this community isn't at all, hippy-dippy and shit. No, there is predation, there is violence, there is the cycle of life and death, but it is all balanced. Competition is in equilibrium with cooperation, and when this equilibrium is shattered, nature seeks to right itself by establishing a new one. And the theming itself parallels this somewhat. The finger is pointed at humans and their life-denying ways, but this is balanced out by the fact humans are also invited to reconnect with the web of life through ST's love of and advocating for humanity. He sees the beauty, creativity, and capacity for love and altruism in our species and wants to preserve what he can of it at all costs, and even to reintegrate it, if he can, into the greater community of life. And this is just brilliant, because ST comes to love the beauty in his crow brethren, in other non-human animal species, but he still defends what is precious about humanity. I basically read this novel as just a magnificent ode to nature, life, humanity, yes, and the great web that connects us all. It can feel at first like this novel will ultimately disregard humanity in favor of the wild, but Hollow Kingdom basically has a perfect ending that completely obliterated whatever remained of that misguided notion when I finally got to it. Just, wow. Hollow Kingdom is both a deeply serious and whimsically lighthearted novel. Because of its premise, it could almost feel like a fairy tale, a Disney movie, or one of, Aesop's fables for adults, but it is so much more than that, if only by virtue of the fact the animal characters aren't metaphors. They aren't meant to stand in for humans or human qualities, virtues, values, etc. They are supposed to stand in for themselves. And once again, Esty stands in for himself as a crow, but then he also advocates for what is good about Homo sapiens. And this is precisely what sets this premise, this brilliant premise, apart. It's rare for me to encounter a story that makes me think, that makes me feel, all of them feels too, and that touches my soul and sense of faith as deeply as this one did. Dune has done this for me, sure. Hyperion even more so. The Southern Reach might qualify as well to a lesser and weirder extent. Add the Left Hand of Darkness to the pile too while we're at it, sure. But at the end of the day, the book that comes the closest to Hollow Kingdom in terms of eliciting deep spiritual feelings are the fucking Mists of Avalon. Which is insane to me given how different these two books are in so many other ways. And yet, that's what I feel. That's what popped into my mind when I finished Hollow Kingdom. I shed absolute rivers reading this, as I kind of did when I finished The Mists of Avalon, as an FYI. And I mean, also, what is it with books making me cry these days? Like, what the hell? And I never would have guessed that would happen in a million years based on the synopsis, nor even the first, third of the book? Just wow. I keep repeating this, but just freaking wow. And, obviously I'm also going to buy a physical copy of this book, hopefully at the big Waterstones on Piccadilly Circus, so you'll see if I'll have found that and Eleanor Oliphant is completely fine in my next reading wrap-up. Hollow Kingdom was straight up another 10 out of 10 read for me. Again, not that long after my other 10 out of 10 new read of this year, Elder Race. Another new, fuck it, I'll put it in fancy, why not? Favorite. Of course, I'd bloody recommend it, like duh, though if I am reining myself in a bit, only if you vibe with nature-related things really. More precisely, I think this is the kind of story that will mostly appeal to people with a specific mindset and perhaps belief system when it comes to the wider natural world and humanity's place in it. It could also be appealing if you love found family, if you love animals and animal characters, played around with in a very original fashion. The writing style, which does take a bit of time to get used to, will be off-putting to a lot of readers. Quite frankly, because it's the kind of style which can very easily feel off-putting to me too. But like I said, here it just worked for me. So do take that into account if you're considering checking this book out. Otherwise, I mean, yes, I would encourage you to go out and read it, but I know we all have different tastes and preferences. That being said, maybe check it out, if only because there's a crow main character, because fluffy dinosaurs forever, all day, every day. So on that rather enthusiastic note, I hope you enjoyed this rave review, found it engaging, informative, what have you. Do share your thoughts about it if you have any in the comments down below, if you feel so inclined, or on the Discord server. There is a link for it in the description box down below. But in the meantime, I hope you'll have a lovely day, evening, or whichever time of day you prefer. Do take good care of yourselves. Thank you for the continued support, and I shall see you all once again reasonably soon, perhaps in my next monthly reading wrap-up. But until then, bye-bye.